They fired me on my birthday after securing a $900 deal for the company. I left, but gave them a parting gift they will never forget. I woke up in my hotel suite on June 4th, feeling like I owned the world. The Chicago skyline stretched out before me, and sitting on my nightstand was the signed contract that would change everything. $900 million. The biggest deal in TechFlow Industries history. After 11 months of brutal negotiations, endless flights, and sacrificing every weekend, I had finally done it. Meridian Corporation, the tech giant that every company in our industry wanted to partner with, had chosen us. They had chosen me. It was my birthday, 32 years old, and I was about to walk into the office as the person who secured our company's future for the next decade. I imagined the celebration waiting for me. Maybe balloons, definitely congratulations from the entire team. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. So proud of everything you've accomplished." If only she knew what I had just pulled off. I ordered room service breakfast and reviewed the contract one more time. Every clause, every amendment, every negotiation point bore my fingerprints. Meridian CEO Victoria Sterling had refused to work with anyone else from our team. This deal existed because of the relationship I had built with her over the past year. As I packed my bags and headed to the airport, I couldn't wait to get back to TechFlow Industries and claim my victory. The flight from Chicago to Seattle felt like a victory lap. I kept the signed contracts in my carry-on bag, too valuable to trust to checked luggage. Every few minutes, I would touch the folder just to make sure it was real. TechFlow Industries had been chasing Meridian Corporation for 5 years. 3 different account managers had tried and failed before me. The deal was worth more than our company's total revenue from the previous 2 years combined. Brad Wilson, my direct supervisor, had promised me a promotion to vice president if I could close this deal. "Land Meridian, Sarah, and you'll write your own ticket here," he had said just 3 months ago. I believed him. I had given this company 6 years of my life, working nights and weekends, missing family gatherings, all for moments like this. When I landed at SeaTac Airport, I felt energized despite the exhaustion. I took a taxi straight to the office instead of going home first. I wanted to deliver the news in person and see the looks on everyone's faces when they realized what I had accomplished. The security guard at the front desk smiled when he saw me. "Welcome back, Miss Mitchell. Big meeting today?" I winked and said, "The biggest." I had no idea how prophetic those words would be. I walked into TechFlow Industries at 9:15 a.m. carrying my briefcase with the most important documents in the company's history. The office was buzzing with typical Tuesday morning energy, but something felt off. People weren't making eye contact with me. Jennifer from marketing, who usually chatted about weekend plans, suddenly became very interested in her computer screen when I walked by. Tyler Brooks from finance, one of my closest friends at the company, gave me a weird look and quickly looked away. I shrugged it off and headed straight to Brad's office to deliver the good news. His assistant, Kelly, looked nervous when she saw me approaching. "Oh, Sarah," she said, her voice shaky. "Brad wants to see you, but there's an HR meeting scheduled first. Conference room B in 15 minutes. HR meeting? On the day I closed the biggest deal in company history? My stomach twisted slightly, but I pushed the worry away. Maybe they wanted to discuss my promotion terms officially. I walked to my desk and saw a calendar invite that had been sent while I was on the plane. Urgent HR meeting, conference room B, 9:30 a.m. Attendance required. The subject line was cold and formal. No mention of celebration or congratulations, just urgent. I checked my emails quickly, expecting congratulatory messages, but found nothing. That was strange. I arrived at conference room B at exactly 9:30 a.m., still carrying the signed contracts worth $900 million. Sitting across from me were Linda Foster from HR and Brad Wilson, my direct supervisor. The same Brad who had mentored me for 3 years and promised me the world if I could close this deal. Linda had a manila folder in front of her and wouldn't make eye contact. Brad was staring at his hands like they contained the secrets of the universe. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. "Sarah?" Linda finally began, her voice robotic and rehearsed. "Thank you for meeting with us. After careful consideration and recent company restructuring initiatives, we have made the difficult decision to terminate your employment with TechFlow Industries, effective immediately. I actually laughed because it seemed so absurd. I'm sorry, what? I said, leaning forward. You're firing me? Today? I literally just closed a $900 million deal for this company. Linda pushed the manila folder toward me. Your final paycheck, severance information, and procedures for returning company property are all included. Brad still wouldn't look at me. The man who had been like a father figure to me for 3 years couldn't even meet my eyes. Brad, I said, my voice getting sharper. Say something. You know what I just accomplished. Brad finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. Guilt mixed with resignation. Sarah, this decision came from above me. My hands are tied. Above you? The deal I just closed will fund this company's growth for the next 10 years. I've brought in over $150 million in business during my time here. What possible restructuring could justify this? Linda interrupted with more corporate speak. The company is moving in a new strategic direction, focusing on different skill sets and approaches. We appreciate your contributions, but this decision is final. I looked at the calendar on the wall behind them. June 4th. My birthday. They were firing me on my birthday, hours after I delivered the biggest win in company history. I need your laptop, badge, and company phone returned by end of business today, Linda continued. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. I sat there in stunned silence, still clutching the contracts that were supposed to change my life. Instead, they were apparently the last thing I would ever do for TechFlow Industries. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. These people had been my work family for 6 years. I had missed Christmas dinners and birthday parties for this company. I had sacrificed relationships and personal time, all for this moment that was supposed to validate everything. I walked back to my desk in a daze, followed by Gary from security. The office felt different now. People were definitely avoiding me, and I realized they already knew. Word had spread before I even got back from Chicago. As I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, my mind raced. Why now? Why today? None of this made sense from a business perspective. You don't fire your top performer hours after they deliver your biggest win. Gary stood nearby, trying to look casual but clearly there to make sure I didn't cause any trouble. I wasn't planning to make a scene. I was too shocked to be angry yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler Brooks. Can't talk here. Murphy's Pub at 6 p.m. I have something important to tell you. Something important. The way he phrased it sent a chill down my spine. Tyler knew something about the situation that I didn't. I finished packing my desk, handed over my laptop and badge, and walked out of TechFlow Industries for what I thought would be the last time. The security guard at the front desk looked genuinely sad as I passed. Take care of yourself, Miss Mitchell, he said quietly. Even he seemed to know more about what was happening than I did. Outside, I stood on the sidewalk holding my cardboard box and the contracts worth $900 million, trying to process what had just happened. I spent the afternoon in my apartment, staring at the signed contracts and trying to make sense of everything. The documents represented months of my life, countless hours of relationship building, and the single biggest achievement of my career. And somehow it had led to me getting fired on my birthday. My phone kept buzzing with texts from friends and former colleagues who had heard the news. Most were shocked and supportive, but a few seemed to know something they weren't saying directly. At 6 p.m. sharp, I walked into Murphy's Pub and found Tyler already there, nursing a beer and looking nervous. He was one of the most honest people I knew, which made his expression even more concerning. Sarah, I'm so sorry about today, he said as I sat down. This whole thing is completely messed up. Tyler, I need you to tell me what you know. This wasn't random, was it? He looked around the pub to make sure no one was listening, then leaned forward. They've been planning this for weeks, maybe months. My heart sank. Planning what exactly? Replacing you with Ryan Wilson, Brad's nephew. Fresh out of business school, no real experience, but family blood. They wanted you to close the Meridian deal first so Ryan could take credit during the next board meeting and investor calls. The betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. They had used me to deliver their biggest win, then planned to discard me so someone else could claim the glory. Ryan Wilson, I said, trying to place the name. Brad's nephew who just graduated from Stanford? Tyler nodded grimly. The same one. He's been shadowing different departments for the past 6 weeks, supposedly as a summer intern. But I saw the paperwork. He's being brought in as Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, taking over your entire client portfolio. The pieces were falling into place. All those times Brad had asked detailed questions about my negotiation strategies with Meridian Corporation. All those meetings where I had to explain my approach step by step. They weren't just checking my progress. They were creating a playbook for his nephew to follow. Tyler, they can't just hand over my client relationships to some kid who's never worked a day in real sales. That's the thing, Sarah. They think they can. Upper management believes relationships belong to the company, not the individual employees. They think Ryan can just step in and continue where you left off. I took a long sip of my beer, feeling anger starting to replace the shock. What else do you know? Tyler hesitated. There's more. I overheard Brad on a conference call yesterday. He was talking about how they timed everything perfectly. He said once the Meridian deal was signed, they could transition to fresh young leadership without risking the contract. They had calculated every aspect of this betrayal. It wasn't an impulse decision or unfortunate timing. They had planned to use me and throw me away from the very beginning. As Tyler and I talked, something else occurred to me, something that made me smile for the first time all day. Tyler, let me ask you something. Who do you think has administrative access to all the Meridian Corporation files and communication systems? He looked confused. I don't know. The IT department? No, me. I'm the only person at TechFlow Industries who has full back-end access to the client relations portal I built specifically for this deal. Every email, every document, every timeline, every contact list, it all runs through a custom system that only I know how to operate. Tyler's eyes widened as he realized the implications. They don't know how to manage the client relationship without you? Worse than that, they don't even have access to the digital infrastructure that makes the relationship possible. I designed the entire system myself because TechFlow's standard CRM couldn't handle a deal this complex. I had spent months building custom databases, automated workflows, and secure communication channels specifically for the Meridian Corporation partnership. It was all hosted under my credentials and managed through my access permissions. Sarah, what are you thinking? I finished my beer and stood up. I'm thinking they wanted to give me a parting gift, so I'm going to give them one they'll never forget. Nothing I was planning was illegal. Everything was completely within my rights as the system administrator. But it would certainly send a message. I went home that night and opened my laptop. As the architect of the entire Meridian Corporation digital relationship platform, I had complete administrative control over everything related to the deal. The system I had built was impressive, even if I said so myself. Secure document sharing, automated progress tracking, integrated communication channels, and real-time project management tools. Everything Victoria Sterling and her team needed to monitor the partnership was accessible through this portal. I started by doing something completely legal and actually quite professional. I transferred full administrative ownership of all digital assets back to Meridian Corporation. Every file, every timeline, every contact database, all of it now belonged to them directly, instead of being managed through TechFlow's systems. Then I composed a polite, professional email to Victoria Sterling. Dear Victoria, congratulations again on finalizing our partnership agreement. For security and continuity purposes, I am transferring complete control of all digital assets related to our collaboration directly to Meridian Corporation. This includes all documentation, communication logs, and project management tools. For any questions or clarification about the transition, please feel free to contact me directly at this personal email address. Best regards, Sarah Mitchell. I attached my personal phone number and email address, then sent the message at 11:47 p.m. What I didn't mention in the email was that I was no longer employed by TechFlow Industries. I slept better that night than I had in months. For the first time in almost a year, I wasn't worried about morning calls from clients, deadline pressures, or TechFlow's internal politics. I was unemployed, but I felt strangely liberated. My phone started ringing at 7:23 a.m. Victoria Sterling from Meridian Corporation was calling my personal number. "Sarah, I just received your email about the digital transfer. Can you help me understand what's happening?" I tried calling TechFlow this morning to discuss implementation timelines, but they're telling me you no longer work there. I took a deep breath. "Victoria, I was terminated yesterday, immediately after delivering the signed contracts. I thought you should know directly from me rather than hearing it through other channels." The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought the call had dropped. "You were fired? Yesterday? After closing our deal?" "That's correct. I wanted to make sure you had complete control over all the digital assets before any confusion arose about access or ownership. Sarah, I need to be very clear about something. Meridian Corporation entered into this partnership because of our relationship with you personally. Your expertise, your understanding of our business, your approach to problem solving. We're not interested in working with TechFlow Industries if you're not the primary contact." My heart started racing. This was exactly what I had hoped might happen, but hearing it directly was still shocking. "Victoria, I appreciate your confidence in me, but you do have a signed contract with TechFlow Industries." "Sarah, contracts can be terminated if there's material breach of stated expectations. When we agreed to this partnership, we were explicitly told you would be our primary point of contact throughout the implementation phase. If that's no longer true, we need to reconsider our entire position." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The biggest client in TechFlow's history was questioning the entire deal because I was no longer there. "What would you like me to do?" I asked. "First, I want you to send me a detailed explanation of exactly what happened yesterday. Second, I want to understand if you'd be interested in continuing this project relationship in a different capacity." "A different capacity?" "As an independent consultant, Sarah, we didn't choose TechFlow Industries. We chose you. If you're willing to work with us directly, we might be able to restructure this entire arrangement." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and processing what had just happened. In trying to screw me over, TechFlow Industries might have just handed me the opportunity of a lifetime. My phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. Word was apparently spreading fast about yesterday's termination and today's complications. I ignored most of the calls, but one stood out. Brad Wilson was calling my personal phone at 10:30 a.m. I let Brad's call go to voicemail, then listened to his message with growing amusement. "Sarah, this is Brad. I know yesterday was difficult, but we need to talk immediately. There seems to be some confusion with the Meridian account, and we need your help resolving it. Please call me back as soon as possible." Now they needed my help. The irony was delicious. My phone rang again. This time it was Linda from HR. "Sarah, we need you to come in today to discuss some ongoing client matters. There are some loose ends we need to tie up regarding the Meridian account." "I'm sorry, Linda, but I no longer work for TechFlow Industries. You terminated my employment yesterday, remember? If you need assistance with client matters, you'll need to hire me as a consultant." "Sarah, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. We're prepared to discuss bringing you back." "Bringing me back? After firing me on my birthday hours after I delivered your biggest deal? I don't think so." I hung up and immediately called an employment attorney I knew. Jennifer Walsh had helped me review my original TechFlow contract when I started there, and she knew all the details of my situation. "Jennifer, it's Sarah Mitchell. I need to know exactly what my rights and obligations are regarding client relationships after termination. Sarah, I heard about yesterday through the industry grapevine. I'm so sorry. Let me review your contract and call you back within an hour." While waiting for Jennifer to call back, I started getting text messages from former colleagues at TechFlow. The office was apparently in complete chaos. From Tyler, emergency all-hands meeting at 2 p.m. Brad looks like he's about to have a nervous breakdown. From Jennifer in marketing, rumor is the Meridian deal might fall through. Is that true? From Mike in IT, they're asking me to figure out how to access some client system you built. I told them I have no idea how it works. TechFlow Industries was scrambling. They had expected a smooth transition where Ryan Wilson could step into my role and continue managing Meridian Corporation like nothing had changed. Instead, they were facing the possibility of losing their biggest client ever because they had fired the one person who made the relationship possible. Jennifer Walsh called back at 1:15 p.m. with news that made me smile. "Sarah, your non-compete clause is very narrow and specific. It only prevents you from working for direct competitors in the same market segment. It says nothing about independent consulting or working directly with former clients who specifically request your services. So if Meridian Corporation wants to hire me as a consultant, completely legal. In fact, given that they're considering terminating their relationship with TechFlow because of your absence, you'd actually be helping them fulfill their original business intent. What about the digital systems I built? Since you designed and implemented them on your own initiative, and they're hosted under your personal credentials, they belong to you. Transferring them to the client was not only legal, but probably the right thing to do." This was getting better by the minute. At 2:30 p.m., Victoria Sterling called me back. "Sarah, I've had a very enlightening conversation with TechFlow Industries. They're claiming that your termination was a misunderstanding and that you'll be returning to manage our account." "That's not accurate, Victoria. They fired me yesterday and made it very clear the decision was final. Any suggestion otherwise is them trying to cover up their mistake." "I thought so. Well, here's our position. Meridian Corporation is officially terminating our contract with TechFlow Industries due to material breach of our relationship expectations. We're prepared to offer you a direct consulting agreement for the same scope of work at significantly better terms." My heart was pounding. What kind of terms? "Triple your current salary, equity participation in the project outcomes, and complete autonomy over implementation strategies. We want you to build your own team and manage this project the way you think it should be done." I had to sit down. In less than 24 hours, I had gone from being fired to being offered the deal of a lifetime. "Victoria, I'm very interested, but I need to make sure everything is legally sound before we proceed." "Of course. I'll have our legal team send you a formal proposal by end of business today." "Sarah, TechFlow Industries just lost their biggest client because they didn't understand the difference between employing talent and owning relationships." After we hung up, I called Jennifer Walsh back to discuss the consulting proposal that was coming my way. By 4 p.m., the TechFlow Industries office was apparently in full meltdown mode. Tyler sent me updates throughout the afternoon. Brad just came out of a meeting with the CEO looking like he'd seen a ghost. Word is spreading that Meridian Corporation pulled out of the deal. Someone from the board of directors just showed up. This is definitely not good. Ryan Wilson just quietly left the building with his things. I don't think he's coming back. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and genuine sadness. I had spent 6 years building my career at TechFlow Industries. I never wanted it to end like this, but they had forced my hand by treating me like a disposable asset. At 4:47 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed TechFlow Industries' main number. "Sarah, this is Robert Anderson. The founder and CEO of the company was calling me directly. Mr. Anderson, I'm surprised to hear from you." "Sarah, I'll be direct. We made a mistake. A big one. I want to offer you Brad Wilson's position as Senior Vice President of Client Relations, plus a 50% salary increase, plus equity in the company." It was a generous offer. Everything I had wanted 6 months ago. But it was too little, too late. "Mr. Anderson, I appreciate the offer, but I'm moving in a different direction. Meridian Corporation has offered me an independent consulting arrangement that better aligns with my career goals." "Sarah, please reconsider. Without the Meridian deal, we're looking at significant layoffs and possible restructuring. You literally hold the key to this company's future." The irony was perfect. Yesterday I was expendable. Today I held their future in my hands. "Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, you had the key to your company's future yesterday morning. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and you fired her on her birthday." I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the call. "What would it take to bring you back?" I thought about it for a moment, then realized there was nothing they could offer that would make me want to return. Nothing you can provide. You've shown me exactly how much loyalty and hard work matter at TechFlow Industries. I've learned that lesson. After I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was officially done with TechFlow Industries forever. Jennifer Walsh called at 5:30 p.m. Sarah, I just reviewed the consulting proposal from Meridian Corporation. This is an incredible opportunity. They're essentially offering you the chance to build your own consulting firm with them as your anchor client. What's the annual value? $3.2 million over the first 2 years, with performance bonuses that could push it over $5 million. Plus, they're offering to introduce you to their network of partner companies who might need similar services. I was looking at making more in 2 years as an independent consultant than I would have made in 10 years at TechFlow Industries. That evening, I signed the consulting agreement with Meridian Corporation. I was officially Sarah Mitchell, independent business consultant, with the biggest client I could have imagined. My phone kept ringing with calls from TechFlow Industries, but I let them all go to voicemail. The story hit the business news 3 days later. TechFlow Industries loses $900 deal after firing key executive was the headline in the Seattle Business Journal. The article detailed how the company had terminated my employment immediately after I closed their biggest deal ever, and how the client had subsequently canceled the contract due to the change in personnel. TechFlow's stock price dropped 34% in 2 days. The board of directors called for an emergency review of leadership decisions. Robert Anderson himself was facing questions about the company's strategic direction and management philosophy. Tyler kept me updated on the internal chaos. They're having crisis meetings every few hours. 3 senior executives have been placed on administrative leave. Someone leaked the story about Brad's nephew to the business press. The board is furious. Word is they're looking for a buyer. The company might not survive this. I felt genuinely bad for the good people who work there, like Tyler and Jennifer. But I couldn't ignore the poetic justice of the situation. TechFlow Industries had gambled that they could use me and discard me without consequences. They were learning that business relationships are built on trust, and trust is a two-way street. Meanwhile, my consulting business was off to an incredible start. Meridian Corporation had introduced me to 3 other companies in their network, and I already had inquiries about additional projects worth over $2 million. 2 weeks after starting my consulting business, I was featured in an interview with Seattle Business Journal about the TechFlow Industries situation. Miss Mitchell, how does it feel to see your former employer struggling after your departure? I take no pleasure in seeing good people lose their jobs because of poor management decisions. But this situation illustrates an important principle. Companies that treat their top performers as disposable assets will eventually face the consequences of that approach. What advice would you give to other professionals who feel undervalued? Document your contributions, build genuine relationships with clients, and never stop developing skills that belong to you, not your employer. Companies can fire you, but they can't fire your reputation or your expertise. Any regrets about how things ended? My only regret is that it took this situation for me to realize my true market value. Being fired was the best thing that ever happened to my career. The interview generated significant attention in the business community. I started getting calls from other consulting firms wanting to partner with me, and from executives at major corporations who were interested in my services. 3 weeks after my termination, I officially registered Mitchell Consulting Group as a limited liability company. What started as revenge had evolved into a legitimate business opportunity with unlimited potential. The girl who was fired for being too successful had become the woman who was hired because success was exactly what her clients needed. 1 month after my firing, Tyler called with an update that made my entire week. Sarah, you're not going to believe this. TechFlow Industries just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Seriously? The loss of the Meridian deal created a cash flow crisis they couldn't recover from. Turns out they had borrowed heavily against the expected revenue from that contract. When it disappeared, they couldn't meet their debt obligations. The company that had been my professional home for 6 years was officially going out of business. It was a sobering reminder of how quickly things can change in the corporate world. What about all the employees? Most of the good people have already found other positions. Brad Wilson was forced to resign in disgrace. Robert Anderson is trying to find a buyer for the company assets, but there isn't much interest given the circumstances. I felt genuinely sad for the hardworking people who had been caught up in this situation through no fault of their own. But I also recognized that this outcome was the direct result of leadership decisions that prioritized nepotism over performance. Tyler, I'm starting to hire people for my consulting firm. If you're interested in making a change, I'd love to talk. Sarah? I was hoping you'd ask, when can we meet? By the end of that week, I had hired Tyler as my director of operations and Jennifer as my marketing manager. I was building a team of people I trusted, and we were creating something entirely new together. 6 months after my termination, Mitchell Consulting Group had grown to 12 employees and over $8 million in annual recurring revenue. We had successfully completed the Meridian Corporation project ahead of schedule and under budget, which led to a long-term retainer worth $4 million per year. Victoria Sterling remained one of my strongest advocates and had introduced me to her network of Fortune 500 CEOs. My client list now included companies in healthcare, technology, finance, and manufacturing. The success felt surreal sometimes. I had gone from being fired on my birthday to running a multi-million-dollar consulting firm in less than 6 months. But the most satisfying part wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the knowledge that I had built something that belonged entirely to me. Every client relationship was based on trust I had earned. Every project was completed using skills I had developed. Every success was the result of decisions I had made. The business press had started calling me a turnaround specialist, someone who could help companies navigate complex partnerships and negotiations. Harvard Business School had invited me to speak at their entrepreneurship program about building businesses around personal relationships. I had become exactly what TechFlow Industries had tried to prevent: a successful independent consultant who competed directly with traditional firms and won. The irony was perfect. They had tried to steal my success and give it to someone else. Instead, they had given me the motivation to build something much bigger than anything I could have achieved while working for them. 1 year after my firing, I received an unexpected call. Robert Anderson, the founder of my former company, wanted to meet for coffee. I agreed, partly out of curiosity and partly because I had genuinely respected him before learning about the circumstances of my termination. We met at a Starbucks near my new office. Robert looked older and more worn down than I remembered. The stress of the past year had clearly taken its toll on him. "Sarah, I owe you an apology," he began. "What happened to you was wrong, and it ultimately destroyed my company." "Mr. Anderson, I appreciate you saying that. I want you to know that the decision to fire you wasn't originally mine. It came from Brad Wilson and a few board members who thought they could manage client relationships like inventory items. I should have stopped it, but I was traveling and didn't learn about their plan until it was too late." He paused, looking out the window. TechFlow Industries officially ceased operations last month. 67 people lost their jobs because of decisions I should have prevented. I felt genuine sympathy for him. "I'm sorry it ended that way. There were a lot of good people at TechFlow." "Many of whom now work for you, I understand." I nodded. "I've hired 8 former TechFlow employees. They're incredibly talented, and they deserve better than what happened." "Sarah, I have a proposition for you." Robert leaned forward, his expression serious. "I want to sell you the TechFlow Industries brand, client database, and intellectual property for $1. I was stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because you've proven that the TechFlow approach to client relationships still works when it's executed with integrity. You've built what I always hoped TechFlow Industries could become." He slid a folder across the table. "These are the details. You'd acquire our trademark, our methodology documentation, our former client contacts, and our reputation, what's left of it." "Robert, I already have a successful consulting business. Why would I want to take on the TechFlow brand?" Because there are still clients out there who remember the good years at TechFlow Industries. Before the politics and poor decisions, we built strong relationships with hundreds of companies. Many of those relationships could be revived under the right leadership. I thought about his offer. The TechFlow Industries brand had been damaged, but it wasn't worthless. In the right hands, it could be rehabilitated and transformed into something better. What would you want in return? Just the knowledge that the company I spent 15 years building might live on in some form. And maybe the chance to consult with you occasionally about the clients I used to serve personally. It was a generous offer from a man who had lost everything due to other people's mistakes. I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes. I'll consider it, I told him. After our meeting, I discussed Robert's offer with my team. The consensus was that acquiring TechFlow Industries could accelerate our growth significantly, even with the brand rehabilitation work required. Jennifer Walsh, who had become my primary business attorney, reviewed the acquisition documents. Sarah, this is essentially a gift. You're getting 15 years' worth of client relationships and business processes for nothing. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers. Mitchell Consulting Group officially acquired TechFlow Industries, creating a hybrid firm that combined my innovative approach with 15 years of established client relationships. Our first move was to send personalized letters to all former TechFlow clients, explaining the acquisition and offering to restore their business relationships under new management. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Within 3 months, we had reactivated relationships with over 80 former clients, generating an additional $12 million in annual revenue. Robert Anderson became a senior advisor to our firm, helping us understand the history and preferences of long-term clients. Working with him, I gained new respect for his original vision for the company, even as I maintained my opinions about how it had been managed in recent years. Tyler, Jennifer, and the rest of my team were thriving in an environment that valued their contributions and gave them opportunities to grow professionally. We had transformed a story of betrayal and corporate dysfunction into a narrative of redemption and second chances. 2 years after that devastating birthday, I stood in front of 300 business executives at the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, delivering the keynote address for their annual leadership conference. 2 years ago, I was fired on my birthday hours after delivering the biggest deal in my company's history, I began. Today, that company no longer exists, and I run a consulting firm with over $25 million in annual revenue. The audience was captivated as I told the story of transformation, betrayal, and ultimate triumph. The lesson isn't about revenge or getting even. It's about understanding that your skills, your relationships, and your reputation belong to you. Companies can fire you, but they can't fire your value to the marketplace. I looked out at the audience, many of whom were probably dealing with their own workplace challenges and career uncertainties. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing that could happen. You just have to be brave enough to see the opportunity hidden in the crisis. After my speech, Victoria Sterling approached me. She had become not just a client, but a genuine friend and mentor. Sarah, I have something exciting to share. We're planning a major expansion into international markets next year, and we want Mitchell Consulting Group to lead the entire initiative. It would be worth about $40 million over 4 years. I smiled, thinking back to that hotel room 2 years ago when I thought I was on top of the world. I had no idea how much higher I could actually climb. The woman who was fired for being too successful had become the CEO who was hired because success was exactly what her clients needed. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and proving your worth to people who actually appreciate it.